I'm going to spend the next 15 to 20 minutes talking about introduction to systems and processes. This is extremely exciting for people like myself. Most of you will probably think that it is extremely boring. I know Julie likes to complain about it, but it's very important stuff. Let's see. All right. Sorry. Here we go. So systems and processes. There's a ton of books and courses out there if you're interested, but overall, for what you're doing for your business, it's really not that important. Just understanding the basic gist of what systems and processes are, that's like what you need. You've probably heard of Lean or Six Sigma, green belts, black belts, etc. It can get really involved, but where I want to get y'all is pretty much to a yellow belt, and that's just understanding what processes are, how to manage them, and just be a part of that. It just means that you understand it and how to execute. As you get higher into that whole thing with, Six Sigma, green belts, black belts, whatever, it gets a little more political. So like if you talk to somebody and they're like, oh, I'm a black belt, all that means is that they know how to manage executives and manage people who have green belts and black belts. You probably don't ever need anything above a green belt, because that's like realistically like the whole process is just it gets just a little mucky after that. Giant companies, car companies, I mean, it started off in Japan. That's what they use it for process improvements, for efficiencies, that type of stuff. But you don't really need to know that. It's just overkill once you get up into the black belt process, unless you're in, a large like Fortune 500 company or something like that. But what is process? Simply put, it's just what you do every day in your business. It's a sequence of events with an input and an output. It's pretty simple. And okay, sorry. Just saw that thing in the chat. So it's just a sequence of events with input and output. They can be very large or very small. It could include one person. It can include your entire company. It could be internal or external. It can include vendors or, lawyers, accountants, anybody outside of your business, or it could, like I said, just be one particular person doing a process. And how you break it down really has to do with what makes the most sense for you. So the more detailed you get, the more complicated it gets. And if you're looking at too high of a level, then you're really not being effective. So it's all about just your ability to just make that decision on how detailed you want to get with your processes. They can be formal or informal. So most of you who have an existing business and are doing your day-to-day, you have processes that you follow. So it's, as simple as walking into the office, turning off the alarm and turning on the lights. That's a process. It's doing your accounts payable process. Like everything, like there's everything that you do can be written down. And that's all we're talking about. And when I say formal versus informal, so formal actually has a workflow, like if you were to work with a process engineer or somebody like that, like, you're going to look at the boxes and you have decisions and all of that. And it's using a tool like Visio or Lucid Charts or something like that. Or it could just be like a bulleted list of here's how you get this done. So me working in restaurants forever, everything had a process for opening, closing, how to make a sandwich, whatever it is. For the most part, bulleted lists. Piece of bread, piece of meat, cheese, whatever it is, build it. There you go. Put it out the window. It's all about what's being done, but it's also about the handoffs. And that's where it gets really important, is understanding what happens downstream from what you're doing or what your employees are doing, or, also what happens upstream. So a lot of times when Julie and I would meet with companies and go through process and talk to them about that, they wouldn't realize like what they did, like how it affected other departments, because that communication wasn't there. And conveniently, we're going to be talking about communication today as well. But the just understanding like what you do and how it affects other people is extremely important, and it's a big part of the process. So it's those handoffs, and that's a lot of times where like bottlenecks occur where the ball gets dropped, like literally, on a handoff. And it also helps you uncover things that where you think something's supposed to happening, but it really isn't, or something else is happening. And that's like one of the things that I love about talking with, processes with people is they think that, oh, so-and-so, this is how they get their job done. And when you talk to that particular employee about how they do their job, that's not what they do. And the job is still getting done. It's just they're doing it in a different way. And it's funny just watching like business owners and managers and all that, like kind of the light bulb go off like, wait, why are they doing it this way? And then you realize that probably it's the path of least resistance. We're all by nature just lazy. So if you can figure out an easier way to do something, you're going to do it that way. Doesn't make it right or wrong. You're going to make your life easier because it's all about like what's in it for you. If you are an hourly employee or whatever it is, like that's all you care about is getting your job done, and you want to go home at the end of the day with a paycheck. So when you're documenting these processes or viewing these processes and walking through your employees, you want to document and analyze them and then figure out if they're actually doing something that's more efficient. Because like at the end of the day, like you want them to be more efficient because they can then add more value to your business, whatever it is that they do. And you want to make sure that you're not punishing them for making their lives easier, which eventually, essentially makes your business more, profitable, whatever it is. So if they're doing something, document, understand it, and then, possibly implement it as this is the way that we're doing things now. We're talking about process and systems. And then there's one other word that we didn't put in there, but procedures. And we're going to talk about all three of those right now. Process is what you do. Procedures are how you do it. And the systems are what you use to get that job done. And so it could be like an actual computer system. It could just be the way that the handoffs work with, between employees or whatever it is, the communication, et cetera. Process is all about being effective, and systems are all about improving efficiency. So you need to know when efficiency or effectiveness is more important. And generally speaking, you want to stick with process and being more effective. So improving upon processes, documenting them, changing them, et cetera, are generally cheaper and quicker than systems, because systems, again, like I said, it could be technology, and that could be thousands of dollars that you would have to spend for a new CRM or payment system processing, or even a new tool. If you can do it, if you can improve upon the process, do it that way first before you start looking into systems. You eventually would want to obviously look into systems because efficiency makes you more profitable, but when you're pinching pennies like we all do, then look at process first. Process is important because it, like I said, saves you time and money, and we all want more time and more money. So you can identify potential bottlenecks, improve upon those handoffs, just make everybody's life and jobs just a little bit easier. And it helps improve redundancy and training. So there's less downtime when you're training a new employee, or if something breaks, like you could potentially already have a process to get around whatever it is that is broken. And it allows for you to work more on your business and not in it. So if you have your processes going the way that they should, everybody should be doing their jobs, and you can start tweaking the efficiencies that you get from being, just more process oriented. And documenting them, one of the best things that I like to tell everybody, creates essentially training documents for you. So the biggest thing that people get is they're like, oh, well, I documented this process, whatever. It's like you, in theory, should be able to hand that off to anybody, and they should be able to perform that job, assuming, they have the knowledge and, capabilities, whatever. And it's going to, in theory, work you out of your own job, which is great. You should not be working in your business. You are the face of your business. You should be working on selling. You should just, be that person doing the branding. Like you shouldn't be in there physically performing these processes, in theory. Obviously there's certain times where you can't get around it, but one of the other important areas is it identifies where you are potentially exposed. So for safety reasons or legal issues, just gaps in how you do anything. So, for example, you could, you've got somebody who's kind of holding everything together, and then you realize, oh, that this is a danger to them or the business. So going through and documenting your processes and understanding everything in your business can help you avoid future issues, or current issues as well. And when we're talking about gaps, we can get into business cases and return on investment, which we're going to, I'm actually going to speak more about next week and week 3 of the academy. But you're going to identify these gaps, and you're going to be able to prioritize them based upon, return on investment, what it costs you, what happens if you don't do it. Like, and this again could be something that it could be a gap that is currently existing in your business, or it's something that could happen. For example, if your main vendor goes out of business, what happens when that break in your supply chain occurs? So that's where the gaps are important, and that's what you will discover when you start documenting your processes. Documenting your processes, that could literally take you like months, like 6-12 months to do everything in your business. And there's really not a need to do a lot, like document a lot of your processes. So being able to identify what's critical and what's not critical is where you want to start. So the first place that most people think about when you say what's critical, it's those things that make you money. But again, it could be those things that save you money or just keep the lights on. So paying your vendors, that in my opinion is a critical process, but most people don't jump to that one right away because you're paying money out and you're not making money. But you want to document that and make sure that you understand who's involved, what happens if, somebody doesn't show up, they get hit by a bus, win the lottery, whatever you want to call it, how you can fill that if somebody doesn't show up for their job. And ultimately it's just like what could bring your business to a screeching halt if it didn't happen, versus something that like you could potentially put off until later. So like, I don't know, if you have a warehouse, sweeping the floors, not really a critical process, potential for safety issues or something like that. But again, that's up to you to decide. Everybody is involved in this, and you can, like, again, get as detailed as you want, or you can do it all by yourself. It depends on you. I recommend working with the end user, quote unquote end user, because you're going to learn their day to day. And again, like what you think they're doing, they might not be doing. And as you're walking through that, you want to document everything that's happening. So you should have an idea of what should be done. You're now going to get an idea of what's actually doing. And then you're going to kind of find that balance of like, okay, maybe they are cutting corners and that's bad for your business, or cutting those corners is actually helping them, to be more productive. So again, it's all about you just understanding that and just documenting it as you go along. One of the other things that I love doing, like when I was working for big companies, was going in and just sitting down and just walking through a day to day with somebody and just listen to their complaints. You almost you act like a therapist in a sense. And they're just going to start complaining. Like, I hate doing this. This doesn't make sense. Whatever it is. And those complaints are oftentimes like gaps that you can improve upon. So that could be something that you can improve with a system, improve upon the process, or, maybe you need to hire somebody else to fill a role because they're, somebody else's, their time isn't being spent the way that it should be. When you're doing your process documentation, you want to make sure that you're like 100% transparent as to why you're doing it, especially if you've never done it before, because your employees may get suspicious or paranoid that you're trying to work them out of a job. And ideally, we don't want to get rid of anybody, and you should be, enforcing that what they're doing is going to be more valuable if they can do something else. So if there's like repetitive tasks that can be automated, or if it just doesn't make sense for them to be doing that, just cut that out, make them more efficient. And in theory, it's going to make them, a more valuable employee, because they're going to feel like they're giving more to the company and that they have more to offer. It also, it gives them areas to learn and build upon their own personal growth as an employee or whatever it is. So you really want to enforce or reinforce what's in it for them. And like, in theory, I mean, like just making their jobs easier should be incentive enough, but you could potentially give them incentives. So, figuring out ways to become more profitable or more valuable or more efficient or whatever it is, profit sharing, whatever it is, it's all up to you as your business. But getting their buy-in and considering their advice really helps them when it comes to improving upon those processes. So if they feel like they're the ones who came up with this idea, they're going to own that. So give them credit where, this is a thankless job being a business owner. So just give them credit, let them run with it, make sure that, that you praise them in public if they want to be praised, whatever it is. And then, make sure it doesn't come back to bite them, because like, you don't want to call somebody out. Like on the flip side, if they're like, oh, hey, I think this is a safety issue, and is calling somebody else out, another employee, whatever. So just using that, like use your best judgment in terms of like how to improve upon those processes. And, like let them, again, it's one of those things like praise in public, but if it's something that might be embarrassing or whatever it is, obviously, again, you're the business owner, you take that one. And that is the very, very quick overview of the intro to systems and processes. We've got almost an entire session at the end of this academy where you're going to get to listen to me talk about process. There's probably going to be a lot of drawings and all of that, but that's not until week 9. So while you're going through the rest of this academy, through the next, 6-7 weeks, however many that is until there, think about your processes and think about like when we get into sales and marketing, what your sales process is, what your marketing process is, like where are those handoffs, like who's involved, everything that I talked about. That's the stuff that the reason that we put this right up at the front is we want you to think about that as you're going through the rest of this academy. So as much as Julie hates process, it's in everything that we do. And that's why I love it, because, it keeps me employed. So just think about process as we go through just everything in the rest of this academy. And lastly, the one thing that I didn't talk about, but there's also a process for your life in general. And that's why we kind of, dovetailed this into the health and wellness section, is that process of your day-to-day for you and your employees is important. So making sure that you have that consistency in your life. There's the transparency, the communication, like all of that is really important when it comes to everything outside of your business. So if you're, whatever it is, you're deliver a service, a product, et cetera, you also want to stop and think about, how does this affect my life? How does this affect my employees' lives? How does it affect, their families' lives? Like all of that. So it's important to think about process for your business, but also, what is it that you can do to improve upon your life just in general.